So Umar Johnson was on a radio show and was asked about the past due taxes on FDMG. He gave an explanation that made no sense and showed that he had no idea what he was doing when it comes to this whole school fiasco. He also addressed why FDMG does not have tax exempt status. He also talked about the past due utility bills. Let's listen to what he had to say about the taxes.
The white attorney who did my closing neglected to tell me that I had 2 weeks to apply and secure tax exemption from Newcastle County, because Wilmington is in Newcastle County, Delaware, okay, and also the city of Wilmington. So there's a city tax that you pay, and there's a county tax that you pay. Delaware doesn't have a state tax. Once I bought the school, I contacted the city and the county. I said, hey, we are not-for-profit entity, okay? I want to apply for tax exemption. They told me that you were supposed to have done this within 14 days from the date of your purchase. How in the hell was I supposed to know I had 2 weeks to get tax exemption? So I reached out to the white attorney who did the closing, and I asked him, why didn't you tell me I had 2 weeks to get the tax exemption? Don't you think that's something I should know as a client paying for your service? He never answered the question. You know what that tells me? He did it on.
The closing attorney's job is to check and make sure that there is clear title for the property, coordinate communication between the buyer and the seller, record the transaction, and disperse the funds. They are not going to advise you how to get tax exemption status. For that, you would need an attorney that specializes in taxes or nonprofit organizations. Also, why does the attorney need to tell you you have to apply for tax exemption? Most people know educational institutions that are nonprofit qualify for tax exemption. Umar has been talking about this school since 2010. You'd think he would have researched this information by now. He said he only had 2 weeks to file for tax exemption. This is incorrect. Let's go to the Newcastle County website. Here you have all the different applications used to file for tax exemption. The application he needed to complete was the general exemption application. Let's open the application and look at the filing deadlines. Here is what it says. With the exception of governmental exemptions applications, all exemptions applications governed by this form must be filed by March 1st to seek an exemption that will be effective for the upcoming fiscal year. The county fiscal year commences July 1st. If you acquire the property between March 1st and June 30th, then you should file your application as soon as possible, and in no event more than 30 days after the date of acquisition. So he had until March 1st to file for tax exemption status. So let's look at the sales date on the property. The sales date is February 6, 2019. Let me address this because it always comes up. You see the sales amount shows $10. Well, he did not pay $10 for the property. I am working on a video that breaks this down. So if we look at the calendar, we see he had 3 weeks, not 2. But why is he waiting until he closes on the property to ask the city about applying for tax exemption? From the time he knew he was going to purchase this property, he should have simultaneously been working on this. This is not complicated. All of the information and forms are available on the city and the county's website. Once again, this dude has been working on this since 2010. He should have a checklist of all the things that need to be done, and applying for tax exemption should be at the top of the list after acquiring the property. Now let's look at the deadline for applying for tax exemption for the city taxes. If we look at the city property tax information on the City of Wilmington's website, then scroll down, there is a section that covers property tax exemptions. Under the nonprofit organization, if we look at the application, we see the following. All nonprofit organizations must file this initial exemption application regardless of city or state affiliation or Newcastle County tax exemption status. Failure to make applications on or before April 30th shall constitute a waiver of the exemption privilege for the ensuing tax year that will begin on July 1st. So Umar had ample time to file the tax exemption paperwork. But even if he wanted to, he couldn't because FDMG is not in good standings with the IRS.
FDMG was a tax-exempt organization under the IRS. But there's only one problem. The IRS never served notice that we had been approved for tax exemption. So guess what I'm saying? They sabotaged us too. They couldn't refuse the tax exemption. So they simply said, we're not going to let him know that he got the tax exemption. We find out about the tax exemption after chasing down the IRS officer responsible for FDMG's tax exempt application. We was calling them, emailing them, both me and my accountant, professional accountant, working on this with me. And then we come to find out later that the IRS withdrew FDMG's tax exemption before they even told us we had a tax exemption. So that's setup number two. So where are we right now? Right now we are in the process of applying to reinstate the tax exemption.
Okay, I don't even know where to start with this one. So let's go to the IRS website to see why his tax exemption status was revoked. Here we see FDMG's on the auto revocation list. The federal tax exemption status was automatically revoked for not filing a Form 990 series return for 3 consecutive years. So what is a Form 990? IRS Form 990 is an informational tax form that most tax-exempt organizations must file annually. The form gives the IRS an overview of the organization activities and detailed financial information. Also, the IRS requires all U.S. tax-exempt nonprofit to make public their 3 most recent Form 990s. The revocation date is 5/15/2017, and since we know the nonprofit status was revoked for not filing 990s for 3 consecutive years, this would mean he got the nonprofit status in 2014. So what Umar wants us to believe is that since 2014, he had no idea he had tax-exempt status. It's interesting that he doesn't know, but there's multiple videos of people reporting and showing that his tax-exempt status was revoked. The IRS does notify you once your nonprofit has been set up. They also send you a letter when your nonprofit has been revoked. At one time, the address used to be listed on the IRS website. If we do a search on this mailing address, that is the Philadelphia address Umar was asking donations to be sent to. So we know the IRS had the correct mailing address. Even if he gets back the tax-exempt status, he's going to have some issues. Let's look at the city tax exemption application. So here is why he cannot even apply if he wanted to. Governmental affirmation letter from the IRS to prove status as a tax-exempt or charitable entity. Letter confirms the owner's federal identification number / tax-exempt number, which he cannot get because his nonprofit has been revoked. And here is why that even if he gets the nonprofit status back, he will still have a problem. No exemptions shall become effective unless and until all taxes, fees, and assessments, together with interest and penalties due to the city, has been paid in full. Payment must be received within 30 days of filing of this application, or application will be denied. So even if he gets the nonprofit status back, he still cannot apply until he pays the tax bill in full.
So where are we right now on the $150,000 taxes that we owe? I have an agreement with Newcastle County that I just made last week, and I have to mail them a $25,000 down payment check on back taxes that we shouldn't owe had we not been sabotaged by both the closing attorney and the IRS. So we entered into agreement with Newcastle County, $25,000 down. We're going to have to pay about $10,000 a month to satisfy the bill before the next bill comes around, which I believe is July of 2020. With the city of Wilmington, we did the same thing. We're about to do a tax agreement with Wilmington where we're going to put $10,000 down. And again, we have to pay off the balance of that before the next tax bill comes out in July. So we're basically going to be paying almost $20,000 a month in order to satisfy a bill that we should not even owe.
Wait. Why does he need to make a payment agreement? He should have the money to completely pay off both the city and the county taxes in full. He himself said he collected $750,000. Based on public records, he paid $400,000 for the property. Let's throw in another $100K for closing. I know that is a lot, but since I'm guesstimating on the closing cost, let's go on the high side. That would leave him $250,000. That is enough to pay the current amount that is due. So he's going to make payments, which doesn't stop the monthly penalties. By the way, I spoke with the county tax office, and they have no information on any agreement. And they have started sending collection letters.
The reason the utilities had not been paid is because we have to get clarity on the meters to make sure we're not being overcharged. Because there's 2 schools, right? 4 buildings, but there's 5 different bills. So whenever I get the utilities, I don't get one bill. I get a bill for 5 different meters, but there's only 4 buildings. So later this week, I have to go out there and meet the city of Wilmington's engineers so they can trace the meters to the appropriate buildings to make sure I'm not being overcharged. There's also the fire water line in case of a fire emergency. I'm being charged for those lines, which have to be repaired. So I was told by a customer service rep from the city of Wilmington that you might not be responsible for paying the fire water charge because your fire lines have been vandalized and need to be repaired. I was going to pay the bill up front and say, you know what, just pay it. And I was advised by the city, don't pay this. You don't have money to give away. You need that money for your school, brother. Don't pay this. Let the engineers come out. Let's trace the lines. Let's assess the fire line. And then after you do all that, then pay the bill.
First off, the way the accounts for FDMG are set up is no different than it was for the previous owners. Here is a side-by-side. We see FDMG, 7 accounts. K-12 Management, 7 accounts. J. Moyer, 7 accounts listed. However, if Umar believed there was a problem with the bills, why wait 9 months to address this with the city? Maybe because there is nothing wrong and you are making this up. In regards to the fire water line, what he is saying does not make any sense. Even if the lines have been vandalized, that has nothing to do with the city. You still have to pay the service fees, which is what the bills are for. Here's where you know this dude is making this up. He said that the customer service rep said, you don't have money to give away. You need that money for your school, brother. Okay, let's continue. So let's get this straight. First, it was the black contractor's fault that there was no progress on the school. Now, the tax problems is because of a white attorney and the IRS that sabotaged him. And the reason the utility bills has not been paid is because the city is incorrectly billing him. It is always someone else's fault. When is he going to take ownership for these problems? Let me know what you think about this in the comment section. Make sure to like and share the video. Also, if you have not already subscribed to the channel, please make sure to subscribe.